Let us now move on to take the next sutram in the Ashtadhyayi order, which is 3390, and it reads Yaja Yacha Yata Vicha Pracha Raksho Nang. This sutram prescribes this affix nang following any one of these 6 verbal roots, which are as follows. First one is the verbal root yaj from the bhvadigana. It is yaja deva puja sangati karana daneshu. Second one is yach, also from the bhvadigana. Tu yachru yachnyayam. The third one is yat, which is yati prayatne, also from the bhvadigana. The fourth one is which is vicha gatau, from the tudadigana. The fifth one is pracha, which is pracha nipsayam, from the tudadigana. The last one is raksha, which is raksha palane, from the bhvadigana. And of course we know the anuvritti coming from 3318 bhave as well as 3319 akartricha karake sanyayam. So this affix nang prescribed by this sutram is used to denote either bhavaha, which means the sense of the verbal root as having attained to a completed state, the action, or akartricha karake sanyayam, which is any karakaha except the agent of the action, provided the word so derived is a proper name. The vritti of the sutram says yajadibhyo nang syad bhavadau. So following the verbal root yaj or yach or yat or vich or prach or raksha, the affix nang may be used to denote either bhave or akartricha karake sanyaya. One small note here is that these words which are derived by adding this affix nang by this sutram, they are used in the masculine gender except for yachnya, which is used in the feminine. Let's take the example yajanam yajnaha, derived from the verbal root yaja, which is yaja deva puja sangati karana daneshu in the bhvadiganaha. So yajna is the act of worship, the act of sacrifice. So here anuvritti of bhave from 3318 is being used. Derivations as follows. We take the verbal root yaj, add the affix nang by this sutram because Panini specifically mentions the verbal root yaj in this sutram. So we have yaj plus nang. Now remove the it letter. The ending ngakara of nyang is a it bahalantyam tasya lopaha. The purpose of having this ending ngakara as a it is to stop the gunadeshaha, which may be applicable. This is done by 115 kiniticha. Of course, in this particular example, we don't have gunadeshaha praptaha. It is not applicable here. But if it were to be applicable, it is stopped by 115 kiniticha. And also, this having this ngakara as it facilitates the application of Sutram 6419, which we are going to be seeing shortly. These are the reasons why Panini has used this ngakara as it in nang. Now the affix nang, it begins with a nakaraha, which is a letter of the vash pratyaharaha. So therefore by ned vashikriti 7 to 8, it can never take the augment it. Regardless of whether the verbal root is sate or anit, it doesn't matter. This affix nang cannot take the augment it because of 7 to 8 ned vashikriti. Now one more thing to note here is that the Sutram 6115 says vachi sapi yajadinang kiti, but this affix nyang is a ngit, not a kit. So there's no question of samprasaranam here in case you're thinking about it, because 6115 requires the affix to be a kit. This one is a ngit, so we cannot use 6115 here. So now the derivation, we continue. We have yajna. Now we apply stosh, chuna, chuho and get yajnya, which is yajnya. So yajnya gets the prajpadika sanya by krit tadita samasascha. Now this example, we derived the form yajnyaha bhave as the act of worship, but we could also have used 3319 akartrichakarke sanyaya and get derivation like this: ijyate iti yajnyaha. The one who is worshipped could also be yajnyaha. Derivation is the same, but here we use 3319 instead of 3318. The famous mantra from the Purusha Suktam: yajnena yajnyam ayajanta devaha, yajnyam ayajanta devaha. So the gods worshipped yajnyaha. So the god worshipped yajnyaha means that here yajnyaha is the one who is worshipped. So 3319 could also be used to derive this form. Okay, let's take a second example here. Prachanam prashnaha, derived from the verbal root prach, which is pracha nipsayam from the tudadiganaha. Again, we start the derivation with pracha nyang by this sutram 3390 because this sutram contains the verbal root pracha. Remove this letter ngakarasit sanya halantyam tasya lopaha. Again, no question of vidagamaha because nedvashikriti stops it regardless of the verbal root being set or on it. It doesn't matter. This affix nyang cannot take the augment it because it's a krit pratyaha by krit the thing and it begins with the letter of the vash pratyahara. So nedvashikriti stops the vidagamaha. And here the complication is that this verbal root pracha, the repha in pracha, should have taken the samprasaranam by 6116, which reads Grahijya Vayi Vyadhi Vashti Vichati Vrishchati Pruchati Vrijjati Nam Niticha. So this sutram 6116 applies whether the affix following the verbal root is a kit or a nyit. In the present case, we have the affix nyang, which is a nyit. So 6116 should apply here because 6116 specifically mentions the verbal root pracha. It says pruchati. But Panini himself has used the word prashnaha in the sutram 32117, prashne chasanna kale. So therefore, we have to take this as an indication, as a jnapakam, that samprasaranam should not be done in this case because otherwise we will not get the form prashna. So even though 6116 is applicable here, the fact that Panini has used the word prashna himself tells us that we have to bypass 6116 in this case. Now to get the final form prashna, we need to replace that chakaraha along with the chakaraha with a talavya shakaraha. For that we need the sutram 6419 which is chvoho shudano nasikecha. That will be our next sutram 6419 which is required to complete this form.